The town of Eldridge had always been a quiet place. Nestled between sprawling farmlands and dense woodlands, its biggest excitement was the annual Harvest Festival. That all changed one ordinary Tuesday when the sky above Eldridge darkened at midday, an unnatural shadow that sent animals scurrying and left townsfolk gazing upward in confusion. A massive spacecraft descended from the heavens, its hull shimmering with an otherworldly sheen. The ship was unlike anything ever seen before. Its surface pulsed with a faint, eerie light, as though it were alive. Whispers of awe and fear rippled through the crowd that had gathered in the town square. When the ship finally landed in the cornfield on the outskirts of town, its impact shook the ground. A hatch slid open with a groan that echoed like a mournful wail. From the depths of the ship emerged a creature so massive, so grotesque, that the gathered townsfolk collectively gasped. The alien dragon, a beast of myth brought to life, stepped onto the soil of Earth. Its scales were a patchwork of colors, mottled and dull, marred by deep scars and strange glowing fissures. Horns curled unevenly from its head, and its yellow eyes gleamed with an intelligence that unnerved those who dared meet its gaze. Its massive, clawed feet sank into the muddy earth, and with a flick of its spiked tail, it unleashed a roar that shook the windows of the nearby houses. Fear turned to panic. Parents grabbed their children, shopkeepers pulled down their shutters, and the mayor called an emergency town meeting. The alien dragon, dubbed Grimlore by a frightened journalist, prowled the outskirts of town, devouring livestock and knocking over water towers in its wake. Eldridge became a town under siege. For days, Grimlore roamed the farmlands, its hunger insatiable. Farmers armed themselves with pitchforks and shotguns, but none dared approach the beast. It wasn't long before the town council decided to drive Grimlore away. They devised a plan to lure it to the old quarry, a desolate, rocky expanse on the edge of town. There, they reasoned, the creature could be contained or at least isolated. A convoy of trucks loaded with livestock carcasses led Grimlore to the quarry. It followed, ravenous and wary, its eyes darting toward the humans who kept their distance. Once inside the steep-walled pit, the townsfolk detonated charges, collapsing part of the entrance and sealing Grimlore within. For a moment, there was relief. The beast was out of sight, and the town could return to some semblance of normalcy. But not everyone saw Grimlore as a monster. To Emily Lark, the curious 12-year-old daughter of the mayor, the alien dragon was a mystery she couldn't ignore. While the adults whispered about how to rid themselves of the creature for good, Emily found herself drawn to the quarry. She wanted to see Grimlore with her own eyes, to understand what the others only feared. Under the cover of night, armed with nothing but a flashlight and a satchel of bread and dried meat, Emily crept out of her house and made her way to the quarry. The path was treacherous, the rocks slick with dew, but her curiosity burned brighter than her fear. When she reached the edge of the pit, she peered down into the darkness. At first, she saw nothing but jagged rocks and shadows. Then, a pair of glowing yellow eyes appeared, cutting through the gloom like twin suns. Grimlore had seen her. The dragon's growl rumbled like distant thunder, and Emily froze. But instead of fleeing, she steadied her breath and tossed a piece of bread down into the pit. The growling ceased. The glowing eyes blinked, and the massive form of Grimlore shifted as it sniffed the air. With a surprising gentleness, it plucked the bread from the ground and swallowed it whole. Emily took a step closer, her voice trembling as she whispered, "You're not a monster, are you?" Grimlore didn't answer, of course, but in its eyes, Emily saw something she couldn't explain. It wasn't rage or hunger. It was loneliness. For hours, she sat at the edge of the quarry, talking softly to the alien dragon. She told it about her town, about the stars she loved to watch at night, and about how she wished people wouldn't be so afraid of things they didn't understand. Grimlore listened, its massive head resting on the rocks, its eyes never leaving her. By the time the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Emily knew one thing for certain: Grimlore was more than the townsfolk believed him to be. And she was determined to prove it. In the days that followed her first visit, Emily couldn't stop thinking about Grimlore. While the town of Eldridge was gripped with fear, barricading their homes and organizing patrols, Emily saw something no one else did, a creature that was just as out of place as she often felt. Under the guise of helping her father with important errands, Emily snuck food and water to Grimlore each night. At first, the alien dragon was cautious, eyeing her with suspicion and keeping its distance. But gradually, it began to trust her. It would step closer to the edge of the quarry when she approached, its enormous form looming in the moonlight. Emily never felt fear, only awe. One night, after tossing down scraps of salted meat and bread, Emily decided to stay longer than usual. She sat cross-legged on the rocky edge, her flashlight illuminating Grimlore's massive face. The dragon watched her in silence, its glowing yellow eyes reflecting the light like pools of molten gold. "Do you have a name?" she asked softly. The dragon tilted its head, a low rumble emanating from its throat. It wasn't quite a growl, but it wasn't a word either. Emily frowned thoughtfully. "Grimlore's what they call you. But that doesn't seem fair. It sounds like a villain's name, and you're not a villain." She tapped her chin. "How about Astra? It means star. You kind of look like you've been made from stardust." The dragon's eyes blinked slowly, and for the first time, it made a sound that wasn't a growl. It was a deep, resonant hum, almost musical. Emily's face lit up with delight. "Astra it is, then," she said. As the days turned into weeks, Emily spent more and more time with Astra. She brought books to the quarry and read aloud to the dragon, who seemed particularly fascinated by stories of exploration and adventure. She taught it human words, pointing to objects and naming them: tree, rock, sky. Astra's gravelly attempts to mimic her were rough, but unmistakable. It wasn't long before the dragon could say simple words like food and Emily. One evening, after finishing a story about a brave knight who befriended a dragon, Emily hesitated before asking, "Astra, why did you come here?" "To Earth, I mean." Astra's head lowered, and it let out a long, mournful sigh. "Home, gone," it rumbled, the words thick and guttural. "World dead." Emily's heart ached. "Oh, Astra. I'm so sorry." She reached out, her hand hovering just above the jagged rock before her. Astra's massive clawed paw stretched forward, its movements slow and deliberate, and gently tapped the ground near her hand. It wasn't quite a touch, but it felt like the closest thing to a handshake the dragon could manage. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. Emily's visits became a secret ritual, a sacred time where two lonely souls found solace in each other's presence. But not everyone in Eldridge was oblivious to her excursions. One evening, as Emily prepared to leave the house with her satchel of food, her older brother, Max, stopped her. "Where do you keep sneaking off to?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. Emily froze. "Nowhere," she replied hastily, clutching the bag to her chest. Max crossed his arms. "You're lying. I've seen you leaving at night. What are you up to?" Knowing she couldn't hide the truth forever, Emily took a deep breath. "Promise you won't tell anyone," she whispered. Max's expression softened, curiosity replacing suspicion. "I promise." Reluctantly, Emily led him to the quarry. Max's jaw dropped when he saw Astra, who rumbled warily at the sight of the unfamiliar human. Emily quickly stepped forward, holding up her hands. "It's okay, Astra. This is my brother, Max. He's not going to hurt you." Max took a step back, his eyes wide. "You've been coming here? To this thing?" "His name is Astra," Emily said firmly. "And he's not a thing. He's my friend." For a long moment, Max said nothing. Then, to Emily's surprise, he lowered himself to the ground and sat beside her. "All right," he said. "Tell me everything." Emily did, recounting her encounters with Astra and all she'd learned. By the time she finished, Max was no longer frightened. Instead, he seemed intrigued. "If Dad finds out, he'll flip," Max warned. "Then we'll make sure he doesn't," Emily replied. As the siblings shared a quiet moment with Astra, Emily felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps, if Max could see Astra as a friend, the rest of the town might, too. But deep down, she knew the road ahead would not be easy. As the bond between Emily and Astra grew, whispers of the alien dragon's existence began to spread beyond the borders of Eldridge. A grainy photo, taken by a nosy drifter passing through town, made its way onto the internet. It wasn't long before it caught the attention of General Vark, a ruthless alien hunter with a reputation for capturing and exploiting extraterrestrial creatures. General Vark, a towering figure with a scar running down his left cheek, assembled his team of highly trained mercenaries. His interest in Grimlore, as the creature was still widely known, wasn't driven by scientific curiosity or a desire to protect humanity. He saw Grimlore as the ultimate prize-aid beast that would secure his legacy as the greatest alien hunter in history. With advanced weapons and specialized equipment, he set his sights on Eldridge. Back in the town, Emily's visits to the quarry continued, though her brother Max had become increasingly uneasy. One evening, he intercepted her as she was about to leave the house. "Emily, we need to talk," Max said, his voice serious. Emily frowned. "What is it?" "There are people asking questions around town," Max said. "Strangers. They're looking for Astra." Emily's heart sank. "We have to warn him." Max nodded. "I'll come with you." Together, the siblings hurried to the quarry, where Astra was waiting. The dragon's keen senses picked up their anxiety as soon as they arrived. "Danger?" Astra rumbled, the word heavy with concern. Emily nodded, her voice trembling. "There are people coming for you. They're not like us. They're armed, and they're dangerous." Astra's eyes narrowed, and a deep growl resonated from his chest. "No, Cage." Emily placed a hand on Astra's massive claw. "We won't let them take you. I promise." The first sign of trouble came the following night. The quiet of Eldridge was shattered by the rumble of military vehicles and the glare of searchlights sweeping across the fields. General Vark and his team had arrived, setting up a perimeter around the quarry. Armed with tranquilizers, nets, and energy-based weapons, they moved with precision, their every step calculated. Emily and Max, hidden behind a rocky outcrop near the quarry, watched in horror as the mercenaries advanced. "We have to do something," Max whispered. Emily's mind raced. "If we can distract them long enough, Astra might be able to escape. He knows these rocks better than they do." Max hesitated but nodded. "All right. What's the plan?" Emily pulled out her flashlight and a handful of firecrackers she had taken from a festival supply box. "We create chaos." The siblings moved quickly, circling around the quarry to position themselves near the mercenaries' trucks. Emily lit the firecrackers and tossed them into the vehicles. The sudden explosions of light and sound sent the mercenaries into a frenzy, drawing their attention away from the quarry. Astra seized the opportunity. With a roar that echoed through the night, he launched himself into the air, his massive wings unfurling like sails. The mercenaries turned their weapons on him, but Astra was fast, weaving through the maze of rocks and outpacing their projectiles. One of the nets grazed his wing, but he shook it off with a defiant growl. General Vark, standing at the edge of the quarry, barked orders into his comm link. "Don't let it escape. Bring it down." Emily, still hidden, turned to Max. "We have to make sure he gets away." Max pointed to the vehicles. "If we disable their trucks, they won't be able to chase him." With renewed determination, the siblings crept toward the vehicles. Max used a crowbar he'd brought to puncture the tires, while Emily smashed headlights and cut wires. By the time the mercenaries realized what was happening, their convoy was in disarray. Astra, now high above the quarry, let out a triumphant roar. But his escape wasn't without cost. A lucky shot from one of Vark's energy weapons grazed his side, leaving a glowing wound. Astra faltered but managed to stay airborne, disappearing into the night sky. As the mercenaries regrouped, General Vark's fury was palpable. "This isn't over," he growled. "I want every satellite scanning for that creature. We will find it." Emily and Max, covered in dirt and adrenaline still coursing through their veins, retreated to the safety of their home. Emily couldn't stop the tears that streamed down her face. "He's hurt," she whispered. "What if they find him again?" Max placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure it out. Together." Far above the town, Astra flew through the night, his injured wing aching but his heart filled with gratitude. He knew Emily and Max had risked everything for him, and he vowed to return the favor if the day ever came. The night after Astra's escape was eerily quiet. Emily and Max sat in the attic of their home, poring over maps and books, trying to figure out how they could protect Astra. The guilt of his injury weighed heavily on Emily, but she clung to the hope that he was still out there, healing and safe. Across town, General Vark and his team established a temporary base in Eldridge. Satellite feeds, thermal scanners, and advanced tracking drones worked day and night, sweeping the skies and the countryside for any trace of the alien dragon. Vark's obsession with capturing Astra grew, his plans escalating with each passing hour. But Astra wasn't idle. Far from Eldridge, he found refuge in the dense mountains, using caves to hide and lick his wounds. His alien physiology was remarkable. The wound on his side, though severe, began to knit itself back together with a luminous energy. As he recovered, Astra's thoughts turned to Emily and Max. They had risked everything to help him. He owed them his life, and he intended to repay that debt. 2 weeks later, under the cover of darkness, Astra returned to Eldridge. His arrival wasn't subtle. A gust of wind and the soft thrum of his wings rattled the windows of the Lark household. Emily and Max ran outside to find the dragon waiting for them in the backyard, his glowing yellow eyes filled with urgency. "Astra!" Emily whispered, tears of relief streaming down her face. She approached him cautiously, her hand resting gently on his scaled snout. "You're alive." Grateful, Astra rumbled, his voice steadier and clearer than before. "Danger, still here." Max joined them, his expression a mix of awe and determination. "He's right. Vark's still looking for you. And he's not going to stop until he finds you." Emily nodded. "We need to get you somewhere safe. Somewhere they can't follow." Astra tilted his head. "Not run. Fight." Emily blinked. "Fight? But how?" "It's just you, and they have dashed not alone," Astra interrupted. His gaze shifted skyward. "Beacon, sent. Help, coming." Before Emily could ask what he meant, a low hum filled the air. The stars above seemed to shimmer unnaturally, and moments later, several smaller spacecraft descended from the heavens, their sleek designs gleaming under the moonlight. Astra's people had arrived. The new arrivals, a mix of alien creatures of varying shapes and sizes, quickly established communication with Emily, Max, and even the startled townsfolk who had begun gathering cautiously. Astra's people explained that their mission was not just to rescue him but to establish peaceful relations with Earth. However, they were prepared to defend themselves if necessary. General Vark, upon hearing of the alien reinforcements, launched a full-scale operation. His troops moved in with armored vehicles and heavy artillery, determined to subdue Astra and his allies. Eldridge became a battleground, its quiet streets turned into corridors of chaos. But Astra and his people were ready. Using advanced technology and strategic precision, they neutralized Vark's forces without causing unnecessary harm. Electromagnetic pulses disabled the mercenaries' weapons, and shimmering energy shields protected the townsfolk who had taken shelter in their homes. Emily and Max played their part, leading groups of frightened residents to safety and even sabotaging Vark's remaining equipment. As the battle raged, Emily stood atop a hill overlooking the quarry, watching Astra soar through the night, his luminous scales reflecting bursts of light from below. Finally, faced with overwhelming odds, General Vark was forced to retreat. His once pristine reputation lay in ruins, and his ambitions of capturing Grimlore turned to bitter ashes. As his convoy disappeared into the horizon, Eldritch breathed a collective sigh of relief. In the days that followed, Astra's people worked to repair the damage to the town and ensure their presence would be remembered as a force for good. Emily and Max were hailed as heroes, not just for saving Astra but for fostering understanding between two worlds. "You changed everything," Astra said to Emily one evening as they sat together on the hill. His voice was steady now, his words more fluent. "Earth and stars, friends." Emily smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "We couldn't have done it without you." As the alien ships prepared to depart, Astra made his decision. "Stay," he rumbled, looking to Emily and Max Guardian. "Protect." Emily's eyes widened. "You want to stay?" "Here?" Astra nodded. "Home, here. With you." Tears glistened in Emily's eyes as she hugged the dragon's massive snout. "Then we'll keep you safe. Always." As the ships ascended into the sky and disappeared among the stars, Eldridge returned to its quiet existence. But now, the town held a secret. It wasn't just a sleepy little place anymore, it was home to Astra, the alien dragon who had become its guardian and a symbol of unity between worlds. And for Emily and Max, life would never be the same again.